Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to start in about a minute. I just wanted to let you know that I was on, and we'll get started right about 2:30. See, the list of attendees are coming in. Perfect. Okay. So hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's COVID-19 Housing Provider Sharing and Problem Solving session. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Torlin Winbush from All Chicago, and I have my colleagues Bridget Doviet and Jennifer Fabrini supporting us for today's topics. I want to go over housekeeping just real quickly, like a little brief housekeeping. Well, I want to go over our goals first. All Chicago will continue to explore additional topics until May 28th at this time. So please, remember to join us each week, and please use the same login information. And remember as the COVID-19 crisis continues, we will build and explore together. Our goals, going back to, is dedicated time for housing providers, sharing questions, strategies, resources, working towards solutions and common understanding. Just with housekeeping, keep yourselves muted. Keep yourself muted until the discussion points. Use *6 if you're on the phone to mute and unmute yourselves. Everyone is in a mute, is on mute. Audio for troubleshooting. If you're having difficulty hearing us, please join the webinar via phone. Click on audio and then click telephone, and please follow the dial-in instructions. If you're on the phone, please do not put us on hold. All questions, please place it in the questions box. That will be helpful for all of us. And when you use the questions box, use it to submit your questions, your ideas, your comments. Also, you can actually use that in the chat. So questions go in the questions pane, and then chat. Any other additional things, like if you have any additional ideas, comments, or resources, please place that in the chat. Okay. Today's topics: community resources, organization support for COVID-19. We have Chicago Furniture Bank. We have Chicago Jobs Council and just housing amendments. We're going to talk about some best practices, and then we're going to wrap up and then share with you the next topic for next week's peer sharing call. So today's peer guest presenters is going to be Andrew Witherspoon and Griffin Amder, co-executive directors of Chicago Furniture Bank. Then we have Mari Castaldi, Director of Policy and Advocacy at Chicago Jobs Council. Gianna Baker, Co-Executive Director, Chicago Area Fair Housing Alliance. And then Henry Shaw, Advocacy Program Associate for Shriver Center on Poverty Law. Okay, so we're going to have Andrew and Griffin from Chicago Furniture Bank to lead us in today's discussion.
Great. First, we wanted to thank All Chicago for having us. I'm Griffin Amder.
Andrew Witherspoon.
And, hopefully the Chicago Furniture Bank is partnered with, many of the organizations on today's call. We just sort of wanted to give a brief rundown on how our policies have changed due to COVID-19.
Yeah, so as I hope maybe not everyone, but hopefully majority know, we have pivoted from in-person client appointments to offering virtual appointments via video call. So organizations are able to make virtual appointments using our same appointment scheduling website. And these are virtual calls. So at the time of the appointment, we will call them, go over some information with the client, and then we will transition to a video call. That video call is conducted using either FaceTime if the client has an iPhone, Google Duo if they have an Android, or we can also do Zoom meetings. If the caseworker would like to be present for the video call virtual appointment, we can do that, but they have to indicate when they make the appointment for a Zoom meeting.
And if a client doesn't have a phone or a computer, the case manager can select the furniture for the clients. We're currently offering about 10 virtual appointments per day. And they, so sort of how it works is a virtual appointment signs up, a caseworker signs up for a virtual appointment for their client. And then, they fill out the initial client information form where we get, the demographic information. And we offer sort of two options for these virtual appointments. Self-haul. So basically what happens then is after the furniture is collected, within the next 1 to 2 days, the client or the case manager must come to the furniture bank and to pick up the furniture, where we then load it up in the truck. The client or the case manager, whoever's bringing the truck, must either stay in the truck or 6 feet away and can't enter our warehouse. And we also offer curbside delivery. So for curbside delivery, we'll bring the furniture to the client's home, which is then delivered and brought to the doorstep, but we will not be entering inside the home. And so the same fees or appointment fees apply for virtual appointments. So it's $50 for a self-haul, an additional $150 for a curbside delivery.
So all in all, for the curbside delivery, that is $200, the $50 appointment fee and the $150 delivery fee. And then I would just like to add on the curbside delivery. It is curbside. With COVID-19, we're taking all the precautions. Our staff members, our delivery teams are wearing PPE, gloves, masks, and they cannot enter the client's home under any circumstances. So it is very important that the client has people there to move the furniture in. We've had a couple cases where clients have not had the appropriate people, and we've had to reschedule those. Rescheduling delivery will incur an additional fee. So please, representatives, if you are walking anyone through this process, please make sure that they understand everything and that they know that they have to have people there when we deliver. In terms of payment, because I've been fielding a lot of emails, payments are the same, exactly what you would think. If it is a client payment, we will collect either at the pickup or delivery. We will collect that payment there. If the agency is paying, they can mail us a check. If they're requesting invoices, they still just have to email myself or our appointments email, and we will get it there. All of our invoices you are able to pay online. So if you have a credit card, agency card, or anything like that, through the invoice, you can do it quick like that.
And we also understand that for curbside pickups, if the client has friends or family helping with the move, that it's really important that we show up on time so they aren't waiting around. So we're making it an extra point to be on time and communicating with the client, for all those curbside deliveries, so we can make them as smooth as possible in order to make sure everyone's time is being used as best as possible. And with that, we'll really open up to questions or feedback. As at the Chicago Furniture Bank, we are here to serve our nonprofit partners who are providing the critical case management and helping find this housing. We're really just a supportive service, trying to make that move easier. So your comments and feedback on how we can make your lives easier, make the program better for everyone, is always the most appreciated, because we're really here to serve you guys.
Okay. So I'm not seeing any questions at the moment, Andrew or Griffin, but is there anything else that you feel, and I know that you shared a lot with us and we appreciate it. Is there anything else that you see coming up in the next couple of weeks that may be a different protocol within the organization? But I see one question coming up real quickly. So I just thought I would see if you had anything else additional that you would like to share.
Yeah, so we like the virtual appointments, and we think we're going to keep them even after sort of normal times come back to place. Just with a lot of organizations, having a case manager come out with a client might just not be possible because of staffing. Just they don't have enough staff. So in order to be accessible to more organizations, and we think we will hold in virtual appointments as an additional option after this COVID-19 crisis slows down. But one of the most important parts of the furniture bank is allowing the clients to choose the furniture. As we all know, a lot of times our clients don't have a lot of choice in their lives, and as they're beginning a new chapter and moving into a new home, choosing what they want is important. So these virtual appointments, they're good. The best thing we got given the current circumstances with this pandemic, but the actual choice aspect, because you're not there in person sitting on the furniture and really testing it out and choosing it. It's a little harder to do virtually. So we just wanted to bring that up.
Right. So I have a question for you. It's from Aaron, and he says, can a mover pick the furniture up from the furniture bank?
Yes, a number of different agencies are working with local movers. So how that would work is, you would book a virtual self-haul appointment. They would pick everything down, and then anytime that day, we ask that within 2 hours, and certainly no later than 4:30, they could arrive at our warehouse where the items were already been brought down and loaded onto their vehicle. So yes, you can use third-party movers.
Okay, awesome. And we have one more question. What is your process for furniture donations?
For furniture donations, we currently are not conducting donation pickups, specifically because of entering people's homes and the risk that has. Our warehouse is open. They can drop it off anytime between 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. And we will treat everything. We treat everything with hospital grade disinfectant.
Yeah, so we wipe down and spray all furniture to make sure that the germs are cleared. A lot of the furniture we're getting right now is coming from liquidators. So, for example, a bunch of hotels, because the vacancy's been down the last month or so, are pushing up their furniture renovation or updating furniture schedules, and they're dropping off a lot of furniture. And for these corporate pickups, there really has been limited human contact. No one's been in these rooms for months now, and they when they rehab hotels, they generally shut down operations completely. So that's where most of our furniture is coming in right now, is from more corporate places, not individual homes.
Okay. Well, thank you both. We really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time out to come and share a little bit about the protocols, and we really appreciate everything you're doing within the community. So thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, and feel free to email us if any other questions come up, Andrew or myself, and we'll put our emails in the chat box.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. So Mari, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Hi, everyone. My name is Mari Castaldi. I'm the Director of Policy at the Chicago Jobs Council. Thanks very much to All Chicago for inviting me to talk with you all today. So the Chicago Jobs Council is a member-based organization, and our members are providers of workforce development services. So that's things like job training and adult education programs all across Cook County, but really the state of Illinois. And I'm going to talk about a couple different public benefits programs that have had a lot of changes due to COVID-19. First, I'll talk about SNAP, and then I'll talk a little bit about unemployment insurance and some of the new expansions of unemployment as part of the federal relief packages. So I'll start with SNAP. Could you go back to that first slide? I just wanted to go over some of the information which many of you probably know about how folks can apply for SNAP. We know that a lot of people were already in crisis and economic instability, but many hundreds of thousands more in Illinois are newly in that situation. So a lot of folks are looking to get on SNAP. Unfortunately, all of the local offices for DHS are closed at this time. So really the way to contact DHS and to apply for benefits is either on their website at abe.illinois.gov or over the phone. And they're sort of doing a lot to put their services online and all of their caseworkers are working remotely. And the slides, which I assume will be shared around earlier, has some links to some of the places to get assistance. There are also a couple of resources that have come up to help folks who are helping clients navigate SNAP. One is a SNAP Advocates listserv, so it's sort of like just a list that people can ask SNAP questions on. I'll put my email in the chat, but folks are welcome to email me directly if they want to be added to that listserv to get that information. And then the Shriver Center on Poverty Law also has a website called Help Hub, which is sort of like a message board to be able to ask questions with people who are experts in SNAP. The next slide, there have been a couple of big changes to SNAP that have been largely positive. One is that through the federal package, there was an approval of an emergency allotment for SNAP, which means that all SNAP recipients will get the maximum SNAP benefit for their household size for the months of April and May, and that could be extended longer. And what this means is a lot of people, if they have some income, their SNAP benefits will be sort of adjusted down based on some of their earnings. But right now, for the next 2 months, every household will get the maximum benefit for their household level, regardless of if they have any income. That should have already started happening for SNAP households in Illinois. And again, we're waiting to see whether that may be extended beyond April and May. The next slide talks about another sort of new program that was just approved through the federal packages called Pandemic EBT or PEBT. And this program is to help families who relied on free school meals to help provide a lot of the food for their household. And so this allows families to get SNAP benefits to replace the meals that children can't access while schools were closed. And that will be sort of in place as long as schools are closed. And we know now that they'll be closed through the rest of the school year. So for households that currently receive SNAP, those should be automatically deposited onto folks' link cards. But even households who are not receiving SNAP but who meet certain criteria will be eligible to sort of access these pandemic EBT benefits. So those are households with income lower than 185% of federal poverty level, children who attend schools that provide free meals to all students through community eligibility. So that's like if a school has a certain percent of students who are eligible, the whole school can get those free meals, and all students of those schools can actually access this special SNAP benefits. And a really important thing to notice that unlike a lot of SNAP benefits, which are basically completely people who are undocumented are not able to access SNAP, generally speaking. Undocumented children who are low income or belong to a community eligibility school are also eligible for these pandemic EBT. Now, this is really just sort of hitting the airwaves right now. So DHS is sort of in the process of figuring out exactly how this is going to be implemented, particularly for families who are not currently on SNAP, but who are otherwise eligible. They're in the process of creating sort of like a simplified application. And I think they're also working with the State Board of Education to help identify students and families that may be eligible. So that will add just $3.50 for lunch and $2.20 for breakfast per child per day for starting for the end of March and into April, but then continuing as long as schools are closed. And then just a couple other things that these are not sort of long-term changes to SNAP, but are just things that have been put into place through waivers that the state has applied for. One is that recertification for SNAP, which can happen on a 6-month basis, is getting pushed off. So clients who are supposed to have their benefits expire in March, April, or May are getting sort of a 6-month extension, so they won't have to go in to get recertified anytime until at least the fall. Another thing is I've spoken to the COC before about the work requirement for able-bodied adults without dependents, which was just starting to be implemented here in Illinois. Well, that's actually going to be put on pause for the duration of the federal emergency declaration. And then lastly, the Department of Human Services is in the process of putting together or like implementing the ability to do telephonic signatures for signing up for benefits, so folks don't actually have to provide a physical signature to get on benefits. So those are just a handful of the big updates on SNAP that I wanted to share. I'll quickly talk about some of the big changes to unemployment insurance, since I know that many people are trying to access unemployment insurance, and then I'll take questions about both programs. So as folks probably know, we have seen a historic spike in unemployment applications at this time in Illinois and across the country. The same number of people applied for unemployment insurance in Illinois in March of 2020 as did in the entire year of 2019. So they're really just seeing a massive spike in applications. And the Federal CARES Act put a couple of new programs in place that I'll go through. Just wanted to note that, like, generally speaking, not every worker was able to get covered under unemployment. A lot of people were excluded. So under normal rules, to qualify for unemployment, a person had to have a, quote, insured job, meaning that their employer paid into the unemployment system. And then beyond that, they also have to have worked a certain number of hours and earned some minimum amount of wages. And also a person had to have left their job at no fault of their own, meaning they were sort of laid off rather than quit or got fired. But even then, people who did qualify, wages were paid out for sort of a limited period of time, 26 weeks, and for a maximum amount of 47% of their average weekly wages. So it wasn't a full wage replacement. But a lot of groups were just totally excluded from unemployment altogether, including undocumented people, independent contractors, people who worked in gig work or as part of the informal economy, or people who got paid under the table, and also people who might have had an inconsistent work history who had been unemployed for a long time. So the federal packages that have passed so far, which are on the page here, have made unemployment a bit broader in a couple different ways. It will last longer, people will get more money, and a number of groups who were normally excluded but who lost their jobs due to COVID will be temporarily included. So there are 3 programs which unfortunately have very similar and confusing acronyms. Pandemic unemployment compensation gives $600 per week in extra unemployment benefits for all recipients through July 25th. So regardless of whether you are getting $100 a week or $1,200 a week in unemployment now, you're going to get that extra $600 per week. The next program, Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, allows 13 extra weeks of benefits for people who had run out, but also for people who are just applying will now get 39 weeks of coverage. So those 2 programs together mean people get $600 extra on top of their normal benefits amount and a total of 39 weeks. And that is supposed to just start taking applications this week. So these are also sort of breaking programs. And the last one, Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, is unemployment insurance for a lot of people who are usually left out. So that covers self-employed people, independent contractors, people who didn't work enough hours to qualify under normal rules. And it also gives that 13 weeks of coverage, 39 weeks of coverage with the extra $600. But the problem with this one is that it requires the state to basically build an entirely new data system to process these claims. And that takes a lot of resources and time. And frankly, the Department of Employment Security, IDES, that implements and runs unemployment insurance has been really struggling and has sort of like a already really outdated system. So right now it seems that those new claims for people who are typically left out won't be able to be processed until May 11th. One thing to know for all of these though, I noted here that IDES is swamped and that there have been a lot of problems for people trying to file claims, is that even if people aren't able to get through the system right away, their benefits should be paid back to the date that they lost their job, not to the date that their application is able to be processed. So that's just something to know, that even though the process may take longer, and that may not be comforting because people really need assistance now, those benefits are retroactive till the date unemployment began. And similarly to IDHS, IDES, all their physical offices are closed. So on the phone and online are the only ways to apply. There's like a schedule by last name of when people are supposed to apply. A lot of this information is on their website at ides.illinois.gov. And also, I should have put on the slide, but I can share in the chat as well. I know that Legal Aid Chicago has a hotline to help people who are having issues with unemployment. So that could be another resource, because I know a lot of folks are finding it really hard to navigate this system right now. So that's sort of a little crash course on some of the updates to SNAP and unemployment during this time of COVID.
Thanks, Mari.
Yeah,
I really
I'm happy
appreciate
to
it.
answer any questions, or
So
I'll
I'm
try
seeing-
to.
Okay, seeing if we have any questions. One of the questions was if, so I'm going to put the slides in today's presentation in the LMS for everyone so you can have access to it. And there's not any questions that I see at this particular point in time. But thank you so very, very much. I know you have our stop, but I really thank you for coming today and sharing this information with us. I mean, it's just valuable information. And so I really appreciate that.
Sure thing, and I'll put my email in the chat if folks want to follow up with questions.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. So, next up, we have Gianna. Gianna, are you there?
I am here.
Okay.
And so should I just take it away then?
Yes, you could take it away. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon. My name is Gianna Baker. I'm the co-executive director of the Chicago Area Fair Housing Alliance. I'm here today with Henry Shaw, the Advocacy Program Associate for the Shriver Center on Poverty Law. The Cook County Just Housing Amendment went into effect on December 31st, 2019, and it gives over 1 million residents with arrest and conviction records a fair chance at securing a home in Cook County. Henry and I are members of the Just Housing Initiative, a coalition that seeks to ensure that people with arrest and conviction records and their families have equal access to housing. Our coalition is centered on the leadership of those who are directly impacted by the criminal legal system. Our membership includes fair housing advocates, criminal justice advocates, community organizers, faith leaders, housing providers, and social service providers. We have more than 100 supporting organizations throughout Cook County, including all Chicago, and I'm sure many of your organizations who are on this webinar today. So in the short time that we have together, we want to just briefly discuss the Just Housing Amendment. First of all, sharing why we advocated for the law, how it works, and then finally just taking time to answer your questions. And I'm just going to go over some of the overview of the law and the background. And then once we get to the question and answer period, Henry and I will just respond to your questions. So anyway, the Just Housing Amendment achieves 3 goals. It advances racial equity and fair housing, reunites families, and makes our communities safer. There are widespread racial disparities at every stage of the criminal legal system, from policing to arrests, trials, sentencing, and post-incarceration experiences. In other words, communities of color are most impacted by the criminal legal system. Fair housing reports have shown that Black housing applicants with records are less likely to receive the benefit of the doubt from landlords than white housing applicants with the same record. So one of the goals of the Just Housing Amendment is to dismantle discrimination that perpetuates the legacy of racial segregation and disinvestment that we see in Cook County and throughout the nation. As another fair housing issue, when we think about this housing and people with records, we recognize that mass incarceration disproportionately impacts people with disabilities. Incarcerated individuals are at least 3 times as likely to report having a disability as the non-incarcerated population. When we look at this issue with the Just Housing Amendment and what it accomplishes, we really were seeking also to make sure that families are being reunited. So 62% of the men and women in Illinois prisons are parents of minor children. A national study of 14 states, including Illinois, found that 80% of survey respondents had been ineligible for or denied housing because of their own or their loved one's record. And so what we think the Just Housing Amendment really does, or our goal is to make sure that parents are reunited with their children and their other loved ones. Another goal, and the final goal that I'll lift up that we seek to do through the Just Housing Amendment is really making sure that we have communities that are safer and healthier. We believe that our communities are better off when everyone has a safe place to call home. And I think we can see that, we know that already, but I think that this pandemic really demonstrates that need. Because as we are under this shelter in place order to stay healthy, how can you shelter in place when you don't have a place to live? And so the Just Housing Amendment creates opportunities for people to really have fair access to housing. Now, I'd like to switch gears a bit to talk about the new protections provided under the Just Housing Amendment to the Cook County Human Rights Ordinance. And so when we talk about the amendment in the context of being a part of the Human Rights Ordinance, this is an amendment that makes it illegal to impose blanket criminal record bans in housing. That means housing providers cannot run discriminatory ads that use language like no felony records allowed, no criminal backgrounds allowed. It means that a landlord or property manager cannot impose different rental terms on a person because of their arrest or conviction record. The amendment also establishes changes in the housing application and screening process. Housing providers cannot consider, when they are evaluating a person's application, they cannot consider arrest, charges and citations, participation in diversion or deferral of judgment programs, sealed and expunged records, juvenile records, and then convictions that are older than 3 years old. There are, though, a few limited exceptions regarding convictions when we look at, for instance, the federal and state law. So a good example of federal and state law is when we look at public housing agencies. PHAs have lifetime bans for 2 records. So individuals convicted of manufacturing methamphetamine and federally subsidized housing, and individuals who are subject to lifetime requirements to register for past sex offenses. And there are other exceptions too when we look at PHAs, and those denials are subject to federal and state law, so they do not apply to that exception. They fit into that exception of records that may be older than 3 years old that are still considered due to law. Another place where there is an exception to just housing amendment is for people who are required to register for past sex offenses and people who are currently subject to a residency restriction for past sex offenses. And finally, if a person does have a conviction record that is less than 3 years old, a housing provider can still cannot just make a decision to just deny them housing. The housing provider first has to conduct an individualized assessment, which is a process of considering factors such as the nature of an offense and evidence of rehabilitation. And there are a lot more details we can cover in talking about the Just Housing Amendment, but in the short time that we have, I just want to walk you through the new application screening process, which involves 3 steps. And then I do believe that too, you received some handouts today that will go into more specifics. And then also I'll make sure that you all have Henry and my information so that you get more details. But anyway, when we look at the 3-step process for the Just Housing Amendment, the first step in the process is called pre-qualification. So at this point, the housing provider would do whatever they would normally go through in their process to ensure that a person fits the criteria for housing. So they would do all of the things they would normally do with the exception of not running a criminal background check. So what does that mean practically speaking? Number one, it means that a housing application cannot have a question that asks the person whether or not they have a criminal background or if they have a conviction. That kind of question cannot be on a housing application. It also means that housing providers can't even informally ask questions to a person regarding whether or not they have a record. At this point, with the pre-qualification stage, the housing provider may look at different things like income. They might take a look at even tenant history and just anything else that they would want to get a sense of whether or not this person even qualifies for the housing. So if the applicant passes the pre-qualification, then the housing provider moves on to step 2. Step 2 allows for the housing provider, if they decide to run a background check. And at that time, when they do screen for criminal history of the applicant, any convictions that are older than 3 years old may not be used to deny a housing application. If a conviction is found, the housing provider must conduct what's called the individualized assessment. And the individualized assessment, again, has many different factors that a housing provider should consider that all kind of fit into the category of providing an opportunity to have a conversation between the person and really just and let me back up and not say conversation, but really provide an opportunity to see a person beyond their record. So different things that may fall under there could even be the nature of an offense. It might be taking a look at their tenant history. It might be even looking at they can consider like the number of offenses. They can consider if a person has like a letter of recommendation, different things. So it's really kind of going through a process of seeing whether or not this person, the housing provider feels that this person may pose a demonstrable risk. And then in that step or in that process, the next thing that happens is that based upon the individualized assessment, the housing provider must notify the applicant of an approval or denial. So then in step three is the process of approval or denial and right to dispute. So if the applicant passes both checks, they will receive notification of approval. If they did not pass step 1 or step 2, the housing provider may deny the application and the applicant has a right to dispute the denial. And so in that process of disputing the denial, that provides an opportunity if the applicant, first of all, I should say too, in that process, if the landlord does choose to deny somebody housing, they also have to provide a copy of the criminal record check that was used. And that's really critical too, because criminal records screening is known to be very inaccurate. And so things may happen, like it might be a matter of a person having the same name. I know I was in a training before where this person was sharing that he had a record and his son did not, but his son was named after him. And so there were times when his son actually would be in the process of getting a background check, and his son would then be confused with him, and so the son would be denied housing, but it was not his record. So things like that may happen. It could just be information that is inaccurate. It could be a record that should be sealed or expunged, but is not coming up that way in the criminal record check. And so that's a part of the process. And then also, in knowing, so the applicant can dispute the accuracy of the information that was used in a criminal background check, but then also the relevance. And so providing an opportunity for people to share things that they have done since their conviction. So that might be having a letter of recommendation from a community organization. It might be a reference from their employer. It could even be maybe a program that the individual has participated in. It might be certificates that the person has received. But the whole purpose and goal of the amendment is just for people to have a fair chance at finding a place to live and being considered beyond their record. And I'm just going to pause right now so that my colleague Henry and I can answer your questions. And then even before we get into questions, I'll just pause too to see if Henry, there's any information that you wanted to share before we get started. And I will say about Henry too, is that he works for the Shriver Center, and they are not only a member of the Just Housing Initiative Coalition, they're also national experts that have consulted with advocates throughout the nation who have passed similar fair chance legislation. And so, Henry, I guess if you want to add or say anything, and then after that, maybe Torlin, if we can just, you can share with us any questions that people have.
Yeah, no, thank you, Gianna. That was a great presentation. I don't have too much to add. One thing I will say is that the Shriver Center and the Coalition are happy to talk with you about making a similar training to what Gianna did today, a longer training talking about fair housing more broadly. And so if you're interested in that, either with the Just Housing Amendment or with other items as well, please feel free to reach out and we can make something work. But would love to know if any of you have questions, thoughts, and we can get to that for you.
So I don't see any questions in the actual questions at this point in time. There were some questions about making the information available. It is available, of course, for the LMS. Actually, the presentation from yesterday is actually available. The slides and actually the recording is available. So if you want to listen to yesterday's presentation, as well as get information, but the information with the actual handbook and the handouts that Gianna prepared and the team prepared on yesterday for both applicants and providers is available. So in this course for you as well. So you'll have access to everything. So I wanted to share that with everyone. That was one of the questions that was posed in the questions box. I don't see any other additional questions. So I wanted to say thank you to both Gianna and to Henry for coming in and sharing a nice overview of the information as it relates to this amendment. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, there's one question. What are the consequences if a landlord doesn't follow the guidelines?
Sure, I can respond to that, Gianna, so you can take a break from presenting all that information so clearly. So there are a few things that can happen. The Just Housing Amendment is an amendment to the Cook County Human Rights Ordinance. And the Human Rights Ordinance is enforced by the Cook County Commission on Human Rights, which is a board that's appointed by our elected officials here in Cook County. What I will say to start is that the goal of the coalition and the goal of our allies is to get people housed. The goal is not to punish landlords. The goal is not to start as many lawsuits as we can. The goal is to make sure that people coming home from prisons and jails and their family members can get great housing. And providers and landlords, their goal is to make sure that people have housing. And so we think we can work together on that. So our first step really is to figure out some sort of solution that does not involve the commission. The commission, what they can do, they can mediate that process. They can be really helpful in thinking of solutions for landlords proactively, but also reactively in response to complaints. And then if they do find a complaint, if they find that a landlord has violated the Just Housing Amendment in some way, they will investigate. They will often have a hearing. And then they can order monetary damages for the individual concerned. But as I said before, the goal is really to work to make sure that people get housing and not to go up to the commission, except as a solution of last resort.
Thank you, Henry. Is there another questions? I just saw that question. Thanks, Sherry, for that question. Is there another possible question to pose to Gianna and Henry at this time? Okay. I don't see any other questions. So thank you both. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Torlin.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.
So Melanie, are you there? I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. So this is basically just an announcement. I'm Melanie Felt. I'm a rapid rehousing locator with All Chicago. And we, in response to the COVID-19 initiative, we are in the process of surveying landlords throughout our continuum to help to house people as quickly as possible who have been directly impacted by COVID-19. So as a part of the COVID-19 Expedited Housing Initiative, we're launching a coordinated landlord engagement strategy to identify units in which to house people very quickly. And we need to identify as many available units as possible. And to do this, we need our COC housing locators to help us. I'm just going to read this slide in case there are people who can't see it and who may be just listening. But the system-wide landlord engagement work group did send out materials yesterday regarding this. And to assist with this effort, the materials include a survey, a phone script, an initiative overview for landlords document, as well as a centralized landlord outreach tracker. So basically, you would just utilize those documents and compare with your agency's individual landlord list to see if there is a landlord that we have missed or maybe did not reach out to. So if you do have someone at your agency who has relationships with landlords in Chicago, we definitely need their help. The survey link, I'm going to put this in the chat box also because it's not clickable on the slide, but yeah, please reach out if you're able to assist with this effort. And I can be reached at the email on here, mphil@allchicago, to get plugged into this effort as well.
Thank you, Melanie. Really appreciate it. I don't see if there's any questions at this time, but I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to do a poll. So we're going to do a poll that's going to, the question for the poll is what resources to support programs participants is your agency in need of the most at this time? Is it childcare resources? Is it education resources? Is it food resources, technology or devices resources, internet resources? And if you see something that is not there, you can actually put the additional comments inside the chat. So the poll is now open. So I see some movement. We see roughly about 46% says technology / devices. Internet and food is coming up. Yep, about 50 more seconds, or yep, about 5 more seconds. Got about 43% of you voted. Okay. So we are going to share this poll with you. So there we have roughly 25% childcare, 11% education, 46% food, 46% technology / devices, and then the internet. And then some of the information that came from the poll, some of you actually put that you still need items like protective equipment that you said that you needed within your organization. So thank you for sharing that information. We're trying, this is useful information that's going to connect to next week's topic, as we're going to talk a little bit about resources, additional resources. So thank you all very much. Thank you too for saying lacking resources for cleaning supplies for clients. Okay, thank you very much. All right. So for future topics, for next week's topic, one of the topics is going to be on food resources and assistance. Jonathan Beavis from All Chicago is going to talk to us a little bit about some of the information that is just touched in Slack, but additional resources as well. So we're going to have that, explore that topic next week. If you have a topic idea for next week's sessions or for upcoming sessions, you know we're going to be supporting topics between now up until May 28th. Put it in the chat, or you can email me directly at my All Chicago email address, or if you wish to facilitate or help plan a future session would be great as well. So I wanted to make sure that before we go is that I wanted to thank Griffin, Andrew, Mari, Gianna, Henry, and Melanie for presenting today. And a reminder to all our attendees, if you have a topic, I'm going to keep stressing it. If you have a topic idea, please remember to email me. But and also please be safe, and remember everything you're doing is making a difference in our community. So be well, and we appreciate it. And we'll see you next week. So thank you very much.
Thank you.